Hi everybody, this is Cody at Mailprotector with technical support, and today I just wanted to go over user management in the new console. So first things first, we're going to go over user sync, because this is typically where everyone starts when they initially spin up a domain. User sync is going to allow people to automatically pull in users from their email tenant, and this is going to make it so it's more of an automated process instead of adding each user individually. So before you ever start, you're going to actually want this to be disabled until you set up a user source and preview it to pull the correct users. You can schedule your sync interval. Typically, we'll recommend 60 minutes. We don't recommend going below 20 minutes. This is because you can have syncs run over each other, and then you start having a perpetual sync happening, and it can cause a few different issues. Next scheduled sync is fairly straightforward. It's going to tell you when the next one is going to run, and then last sync tells you when the previous sync ran. So there are three different types of user sources. We have Active Directory, Office 365, and G Suite. Office 365 and G Suite are relatively the same process. You're going to log in using a global admin account, and then once you're logged in using a global admin account, you are going to be able to pull in users as you want. There are a few different choices when you're setting this up. So when you set it up, you're going to click Add and then select your user source. You'll connect with the global admin as we discussed before. You can create filters. This will limit the amount of users that will be pulled in. If you don't want to pull in a specific address, you can add it. It does use the Graph API for Office 365 or Google respectively. So the fields you're going to input will auto-populate, but you can also look up the different Graph API fields for Microsoft or Google, and they'll tell you which fields will match what for each different user. So these fields can include many different choices, username, user last name, user birth date, things like that, and you can use that to narrow down either if you want to or not want to include them. Destination is our new ability to direct users to a specific group. So you can have different user syncs running for each different group and then filter out which users you want or don't want to go to those groups. Advanced options, sync usernames is only going to be used for Active Directory users. And then filter by domain, we do recommend that you turn this on because it narrows it down to only searching for users in the domain that you're on. This will prevent resource mailboxes from being pulled in and extra users being pulled in and having you build for those. So going back to this page, move users is going to allow the user sync to move users between groups if you have multiple groups and multiple user syncs running for each group. Manual sync, this is running it out of cycle with the scheduled sync interval. You can run a manual sync and it will run immediately and pull in all the users. This is also a great place if you want to preview. It will tell you all the different users once that all of these different sources will pull in. Notifications, these are going to tell you who is getting removed, if an error is occurring where we're not able to pull, things like that. The manager that enables these is the manager that receives these notifications. So you're aware. And then recent activity, this is going to give you everything that's happened recently. It's going to provide errors. It's going to provide who was added or removed. If something was updated, if an alias was added, it's going to give you everything that the user sync will adjust. If you have to go further back, you can click this View All Activity area, and it will load into a search window where you can search all the activity for quite a while. So that'll make things a little easier for you to find if you're looking for something further back. Regards to Active Directory, this is the third option. We don't have a ton of people using this anymore, but if they do, you go in here and you add Active Directory just like you did before. You'll add your host name or your IP address. If you are using SSL, you have to use a host name. You cannot use an IP address. This is because you cannot attach a certificate to an IP address, you can only attach a certificate to a host name. So that's a big issue that we have people call in about. And then your username, password, and then search base. You do want to make this search base as narrow as possible, because if you make it too broad, it's going to pull in a lot of extra users, and it will also pull in resource mailboxes, and the system will automatically charge for those. If you want to make it broad, you can always narrow it down using filters also. As we discussed before, these filters, once you have it set up and synced, it will auto-populate the fields that we pull for Active Directory. Destination is the same. You can choose which group you want it to go to. And then sync usernames is Active Directory specific. And if you want to have people log in using their username from Active Directory, you can turn this on, and it will sync that username instead of the mailbox username. So that's going to be everything regarding user sync. There aren't really a ton of issues with this. If you're logging in with a global admin account, it's going to work, and if everything's set up correctly, it's going to function correctly. So it's fairly straightforward. Next, I want to go over some user management. So if you are in a group that has Exchange enabled, all your user management is going to be done in the Exchange panel, and this Exchange panel can be found by clicking this button. It will redirect you to the Exchange panel, and you can add and remove users via that panel. Additionally, if the users are in the list, you have a few different buttons you can use. The export selected users is going to pull the user's address, first name, last name, type, group, and the date added. So it's going to pull all this information here. Delete is fairly straightforward. It will remove the user. Moving the user is going to move them from one group to another. So if this group is in test and I select this user and I select move, I can pick any other group aside from test to move them to, and that'll bump them over to that group. You can reset password for selected user, so this will allow you to set it, or you can set an automatically generated password and then provide that to them. But this provides an easy way to reset their password instead of going 3-4 layers deep into their settings. The user guides, this is only going to include bracket at this time. We do hope to provide more guides in the future, but bracket is the one that's available now. And this will allow you to send a bracket startup guide to the user, so they can kind of get to know how to use it. The checkbox at the top here will select everything on the page. If you have more than 50 users, to select all of the users, you have to hit the select all button, and then the clear button is fairly straightforward also. Additionally, if you have a lot of users, you can use the search box and just pull up who you'd like. This will narrow it down to whatever matches closest. You do want to use the username. If you use the domain, it's just going to continue to pull everybody. So next we want to go over the individual user settings. So if you click into a user, you'll jump to their overview page, and from there, this little ellipse icon on the far right is edit. And when you click this, it'll lead into the individual user settings. So from here, you can change the time zone that they see in the console. You can change their name. You can adjust their password here also. These notifications are going to be the message review notifications, so it will tell them all of their quarantined information. You can set this to send to anybody. So if you can add any email address, and it will add it, and it will send normal notifications to a different email address also. This is specifically helpful for things like distribution groups or non-user mailboxes, because then you can filter the quarantine messages from those users to someone else, a human, who can actually take a look at them and see what they want to do. Removing them is just as simple. Urgent for users is not something that we're using currently. There's nothing urgent that we would tell a user that we wouldn't want to inform a reseller of first. So all the urgent is reserved for resellers, It's mainly just there so that we can add it in the future if we want to add any additional functionality. When do you want to receive notifications? You can actually schedule this and set it which days you want to and which days you don't want to receive notifications. If a client is saying they don't want to have anything sent to them on the weekend because it blows their phone up, you can set that. So that's pretty nice. If Cloud Mail is enabled, we do allow forwarding. This will be done in the user section when you edit their profile. Effectively, keep a copy after forwarding says to also send it to myself. So if I wanted to send to Cody Eckel and I wanted to send to Josh, I will want to keep a copy to have one sent to me, and then I will do a forward to Josh if I wanted to do that. This will accept anything, and it will attempt to forward to Josh, and obviously it will bounce. But if you put a full email address in there, it will function as intended. So message feeds are fairly straightforward. So this is if a client wants to have their email updated every time something is quarantined. We've broken it down into individual sections, so spam, policy, and viruses. Policy is anything blocked by a rule. Viruses are viruses, and spam is effectively everything else. All is just going to include all three of these for you. And then we also have outbound messages, but the client receives an email if their outbound message is blocked, so I've never seen anyone use this message feed, but it is there for you if the client wants a little bit of a faster response time if they have something blocked. And to set this up, there is a user guide for that in the Help Center, and that's also fairly straightforward. User type. So this is a very common question. We'll have UserSync pull in a distribution group as a user, and they'll be billed for that. If you don't want them to be billed, you can set them to anything else that isn't a user or a discovered user. So we don't bill for shared equipment, room, contact, public folders, or mailing lists. So this is where you would adjust that user type here. And then last but not least, you can always delete a user if you want manually here. The option was also available at the user list. That would be everything we need to go over for user management. If anyone has any questions or concerns, they can always email in a ticket by going to the Help Center, or they can give us a call. We're always happy to help. Thanks, everybody. Bye.